Imagine creating beautiful boxes just like these. Well, you can, and it's much easier than you think. Gifkins Dovetail manufactures the easiest jig on the market. It's the only Australian-made dovetail jig. It's so simple to use and cuts precise joints every time. There's no measuring, no fiddling, and no fuss. We even offer box making courses to suit all levels. And of course, every purchase comes with our after-sales service. So explore our website to see the Gifkins jig and so much more. You can stop that whenever you're ready, I suppose.
Good morning, everybody. How are we today? It's a lovely sunny day here in Coffs Harbour. Actually, the weather's quite good because it's a bit cooler. So it's going to be a good show today. So what I want to do today, first of all, where we got to last week. Last week we did a little bit of trimming. We did lots of trimming actually. We cut some rebates in the top of the box. We cut the rebates for the hinges. We made an insert for it. We made the tops all parallel to the bottom. So that took quite a bit of time. So what I'm going to do today is we're going to do a little bit of exploring on different types of lids and what we can do with lids. So bear with us because today we're going to be doing very, very close-up work. So we'll go from there. So basically there's our box. Now, different types of lids. Lids are generally the feature of the box when you first look at the box. Okay, so people walk up to a box and they go, oh, isn't that nice? And it's because of the features that you sort of incorporate in how you develop your lids. The box itself is just a standard frame. You've got 4 sides, you've got an internal and an outside and all that sorts of bits of things on it. So you've got all the stuff with the boxes, but the lid, generally, you want that to pop. You want that to work. So what I'm going to do is I'll show you a couple of different ones I've got here and then we'll take it from there. So when we get into the fancy stuff, if you look at this lid here, you can see that I've got it's a frame and panel lid. It's got all the bits and pieces and bells and whistles on it. It's got a frame around the outside of it. It's got a little lifter on it. It's got butterflies in it. It's got rebates in the frame itself or in the feature panel. The feature panel itself is a different one to the timber. So you've got lots of different things going on with the box, with the lid. And you'll notice that a lot of it actually matches up to the framework of the box. I've got silver ash, frame, silver ash parts on the box. I've got rose mahogany around the outside of it, and you'll notice I've got that around the box as well. And the feature is the bit in the middle. All right. So if you have a look at that one there, this one here is pretty much around the other way. I've still got the feature panel in the middle, but I've changed things up a little bit. And as you can see, the two lids are very, very different, but yet the box is exactly the same. So just by making that box, the lid a little bit differently, you can get different visual effect. So they're both very complicated box lids. And we're going to go there, by the way, later down the track. But what we're going to do is we're going to get into some easier stuff. You'll notice this one here is just a very plain frame and panel lid, and we're going to make one of those. Hopefully by the end of today we'll be able to put together the components to make this one. All right, so we have a fairly boring panel, and we have our outside frame and all the parts match each other. No butterflies, no inlays, and just a simple, easy to make panel and frame and panel lid. But before we get to those, so I'll just put those out of the way, what we're going to do is we're going to make just a lid a bit like that, okay? It's just a flat piece of material. Very simple, very easy. It has a simple lifter. I'm going to show you how to make the lifters today, so you'll have to bear with me with that because it's a very complicated system. So we're going to make that towards the end of the program, but it's just a very simple lid. So get these out of the way and we'll get some work done. All right, now I've got stuff everywhere. This is the one we did last week where we cut the top. So we cut the top, and what I've done is I've fitted 2 hinges. So what I want to do today is I want to show you how I fitted those hinges so that just to make it a little bit easy for you. There's a few things involved, so if you've got a notepad you might want to make a couple of notes about this one. So I'll grab this other box. So here's the box that I was working on.
Col, a couple of our viewers are saying a plain lid. You're going to do a plain lid. Your version of plain's a little bit different, I guess.
Yes, plain lid. Yes, I'm going to do a plain lid because there are people who don't have the tools to actually go through the other process, or it's just a step too far. So let's make it a plain lid, and plain lids can always be nice.
Yeah.
So let's start at the beginning. Okay. So first of all, fitting the hinges. Now I have a couple of hinges. Remember last week we talked about, I'll just put this on here. Remember last week we talked about stop hinges and butt hinges. Now we're fitting the stop hinges. These stop hinges only open to 91 degrees. Okay, they're very small. They're an inch long. They're relatively cheap. As I said to you last week, you can get these from Carol's Woodworking Supplies in Melbourne. He has them online, I believe so. So if you Google Carol's Woodworking Supplies, you'll come up with his website and you can order them online. Now these are the 1 inch and they will fit on there like so. Now the thing with these things is that they have a square back. You can see it's square at the back, and when you open it, the corners of that square protrude past the base of the, here you can see that here. I don't know if you can see that. You can see that it protrudes past the outside frame of the hinge, which means we have to allow for that in our rebate. So the first thing to do is to fit the hinges. And when I'm fitting hinges, particularly these simple ones, as you can see, I've cut the rebate all the way through the piece of timber. So the front edge of the hinge, is going to show
Yeah, that looks good.
Looks good?
Mm.
Get the hinge to fit in there. It shows on the front inside edge of the box. If you want it to fit so that you've got a piece of timber in there, you're going to have to refit a different way from what we're doing today. I won't go into that at this stage because it's quite a difficult task and lots of effort involved in cutting and using chisels. So we're just going to keep it simple. So what I'll do here, I'll put ET up so that you can see what's going on. what I'm going to do here is just show you how I fit these. So the first thing I'll do is I'll have a flat piece of timber, and I'll clamp it into the box like that. So it's just sitting flush with the top edge, like so. Bring the ET around a bit more. So all I've got now is I've got something to push the hinge up against. And then I get my trusty drill. Now, the drill itself is one of these. This little gadget, when you slide that back, you can see the tip of that has a chamfer on it. And when you push that, there's a drill bit in there. Okay, so that will sit in the rebate or the countersinking section of the drill of the hinge, and it'll drill in the centre. Now, where do you get those? If you have a look, these are. Let's have a look up here. This is what they are. And you can buy them in a set of 3 from your local hardware store. You can get the single ones, or you can get a pack of 3 like that, if you like. So you can get those anywhere, pretty much anywhere in the hardware store. You'll find those.
Col, what's the is there a brand name?
The P&N.
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 Yeah.
Okay, so this is how we go about this. I'll go back to here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drill one of those holes. So okay, and then I did have little screws. There's one there. Pop that in there. Sometimes when you put those screws in, if you're using extremely hard timber, you might need to get a steel screw, screw it in there and cut yourself a thread, take it out, then put your brass screw in. If you just jam your brass screw in there for very hard timber and it locks up, you're going to twist the top off your screw, and then you've got to drill it out. So it doesn't always work very well. So what we have now is we have that hinge there. Now it won't, you can't close it over because of the way that folds around the back here. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to put create a little bit of relief on the inside of the rebate to counter for that. So this is how we go about that one. Grab your pencil. And you can see that part is the part that we have to relieve. Okay, so if I put a mark here and a mark here, take that out. Now, just pop the hinge off. Don't be afraid to take your hinges off and put them back on again. A lot of people put them on and leave them there, and they're too afraid to take them out again. You should be able to take them out, put them back whenever. Okay, now, before I take that off, that's on my left-hand side. So I want to mark that hinge, because sometimes the holes in the hinges, particularly these cheaper version, are not all in the same place as each of the other hinges. So I mark it, and I'm just going to put a little L on the bottom there like that, okay, because that will go on my left hand side. Of course the other one's going to have an R on it because it's on the right hand side. Now I'm going to show you this one. Let's see if I can get this Now, I have a little file. This little file is just a little diamond file. And all I'm going to do is file a chamfer on that. Now this is what you call the Col Hosie method. There are probably a whole lot of different ways you can do this, but I find this is relatively effective. And when I'm hinging is generally my quiet time when I'm making boxes, because you need a little bit of patience and you need to sit yourself quietly somewhere, turn on some really nice music, and just patiently create your little chamfers on there. Okay, so as you can see, take a bit more off this one. I've got that set at about 45 degrees, and you can sit and you can see that I've got, you can see that I've just got to, I've got to take a little bit more off this one here. Now can you sit and adjust this out all you like? Remember we've only got one screw in there. I only ever put one screw in at a time, and if I have to readjust, at least I've got some clean material where I can you couldn't want to try and do this with after a heavy night out, trying to get that tiny little screw in there, especially trying to use a tiny little screwdriver. Okay, so that almost goes. Oh, actually it does. So there's my there's my hinge now. It actually fits nicely. Okay, so I have both of those fitting. Okay, so I'll fit the other one, and I'll do that later. I'm not going to do that one right now. I'm going to go to my next box, something else that I've done. This one here, I've done that to both of these. Okay, so I've got both hinges working. They work really, really nicely. So now it's time for the lid. Now last week we cut a lid. This is it. Okay, so it was, I better go back up here I suppose. So this is the lid that we cut last week. Piece of rose mahogany, sanded both sides. It matches up to the rest of the pieces there. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to fit that onto the box. Now I've already cut one hinge. Oh, can't see that. I've already cut one hinge rebate and I've screwed it in place. So I'll show you how to cut the other one. So I'd normally have that sitting like that. Okay. Okay, I'll drill a hole, put the screw in it. Okay, and then the lid will close up. So what I have to do is the other end. Now, when you cut your base, or cut your lid I should say, the lid should fit snugly. There should be no movement whatsoever between the two ends. Okay, so you should not, it should be snug. A little bit of sanding later will take off that little extra so that you can open and close it, but it should be very, very snug. That will give you the opportunity to do this. You can see the markings I've got here. I've used a tri-square and I have squared a line. Let me do this properly. Okay, and so I will square a line with a pencil there. I'll square my line with a pencil here so that they line up. And then I square my line here. So a line there, a line there. So I've transferred these marks up onto the back inside edge of the box. I'll then get my measurement. The measurement is the exact, because your hinge comes to the front edge here, the exact thickness of your back panel. Draw yourself a line. You can see I've got mine there already. Now the next thing is to scribe those lines so that we can do the next task. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to just scribe those lines if I can see them. I'm just scribing that line. What I'm doing is just cutting across the fibres for the next task. If you can see what I'm doing there. Here's my square. And you can see I've cut across the fibres. That will give me a nice sharp edge for my next task. My next task is to cut that out. Now, create your piece of timber to the bench. And then I have this tool. Okay, so I have a little trimmer router. Let's shift some of this out of the way. I hope you're keeping up. Okay, so I've got a trimmer router. Just plug him in. Now my trimmer router, just turn that off, otherwise I'll hurt myself. The trimmer router has that router bit in it, the TSRW5. Okay, so it's just a small one, doesn't need to be very big. This is the one that I use to cut the tops off the boxes. Okay, so it's quite small. And it's set to the thickness of my hinge. So if I sit the hinge on there, it's set to that height. Now, all I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove as much material as I can without going to the edge. So I'll just put this where you might be able to see. I don't know if you can see in there. Mm. That out, we don't need that anymore. And so what we've done there, come around here again, as you can see that I've rebaited out the majority of it. You can see I've still got some lines there. So now, trusty chisel. When I'm doing my box lids, I never hit any of my chisels with a mallet. I do the whole lot by hand. very light pressure. Just going to put this where you can see what's going on. So I trim a little bit off and work my way back to the line. Now, there are two things that novices with chisels tend to do that causes grief in the end. The first one is having your hand behind the chisel. If you have your hand behind the chisel blade and you slip, it's going to go into your fingers. Okay? Generally they're pretty sharp. The other thing that they do is they use it as a lever. It's not a lever, it's a cutting tool. Okay? Just a small chisel, but it's a cutting tool. And if it doesn't come out off when you're cutting, well then of course you've got to go back to cut. You don't use it as a lever. So
go down to the other camera, Col. And if you move this one over, your hand's always in the way, Dol, so you just need to move it around.
Okay.
Hopefully that's better.
So I'm just going to trim that up. Other end. You'll notice I'm doing the ends of it first, trimming it. It's easy to cut across the grain. And then we take the back out of it. This is where scribing with your marking knife, you've got something to put the chisel in. So be accurate with that so that you don't end up cutting a crooked rebate. So now we have the rest of that material is out of there. Like I said, lots of close-up work here, and you'll also find you need a little bit of patience as well. Okay, now we fit.
Looking good.
If it doesn't fit, at least you have something to work with. Oh, look at that work first go.
Beautiful.
Perfect. Okay, so that fits in there quite nicely. Now, I'll go back to this camera here. What you can see I've done here is I've cut my rebate again. You can see the ones on the bottom, so underneath. There's also one on the top that has to be done as well. So I'll mark that. There's generally not a lot of shortcuts that you can actually do with this technique. It's all one way, unfortunately. So I have to cut my rebate. Remember, about 45 degrees. You may need to do it a couple of times. Am I starting to make sense, folks, or is it a little bit left-hand Swahili?
Probably a bit of both, Dale.
Bit of both. Okay. So what I want to do here, so what I've done is I've fitted that like so. Whoop. I've already drilled and fitted that one there, so I'm going to put the screws in there.
Sorry, Col, before you do that, could you please show everyone the marking knife, the marking out knife that you used?
Ah,
yes.
this is a
hold it still.
A Vespa tool. Just it's a fairly heavy one. As you can see, I've used it and haven't cleaned it. It's still got a little bit of grease and stuff on it. But Chris Vespa in Melbourne sells these. They're very nice. Really handy to use. If you haven't got one of these, you can always use a Stanley knife.
Does Col Clinton make the same sort of knife, Col?
I'm not aware of it, no.
Okay.
Okay, so what I need to do now is I need to get my trusty drill. These tiny screws generally come with the hinges you buy. Now, it's not quite fitting exactly right, but it's pretty close. Oh, like it's pretty close. It's just perfect. It's exactly what I was looking for. I was hoping it would work properly, and it has. So let's get ET out of the way. So what you can see now is the lid, very simple, very easy lid, flush with the top. It works really, really nicely and opens. Got a tiny gap on either side, which is fine, which is what I'm looking for. So a little bit more effort yet to get it perfectly flat, but at least we've got the lid fitted. Now I've only got 2 screws in each part, so each hinge, so they'll be done later. Next step, what we want to do now is to start thinking about the lifter. Now if you look at these boxes here, we're going to go through a couple of techniques on making the lifters. This little lifter here it is quite a nice one. You can see, you can see it's added. It's also got a little step underneath, so I'm starting to sort of jazz things up a little bit. It's right angled. It's just glued on top. Okay, you don't glue it on after you've put the finish on. You can do it before you put the finish on it, but you need to make some sort of lifter. Now there's 2 different types that I generally use. There's this one, which is the more complicated one, or this one. Now this one is part of the lid. Hold it still so you're going to actually see it, and I'll focus on it in a sec. You can see it's rebaited underneath, got a round over on the outside. How do we get that focus? There we go. You can see it's quite a nice little lifter, and it's part of the lid. You'll notice on that box that I'm doing there that I had a little bit extra overlapping over the front edge, and that allows me to do this. If I don't want to do it, I'll just sand it off flush, and then I'll just add the lifter onto the top of it. So what I want to do is I want to show you how to make this lifter, and I also want to show you how to make the other lifter. So this one here, you need to make a little jig. Remember the jig we made right back in the beginning? We made this little jig, and we used this one here, that shape, to do the little pen holders. Okay, so we cut the corners off the pen holders, and that was the jig that we made. I've made the same thing for the little handles. You can see I've got a little bit of a cutout here. Okay, so it's just that little bit. Okay, also I've added a toggle. You need to have one of those. This one here is big enough to do the bigger lids. Attached. So if I was doing the bigger lid, I would put it on there and the toggle would hold it down, and then I'll just clean off the edge. Okay, so I just clean off this edge here. But I'm going to do a smaller one. Remember when we first started doing this box, we also made a test joint. This little box is actually a result of all those test joints. I cut the timber up and built a box out of the leftovers. Instead of throwing them in the scrap, I made a little box out of it. And what I want to do with this one is I want to cut the lifter into the front edge of the lid. So I've done all the same things that I just did before with the lid. I've got my rebates there. I've got my bit of relief for the hinges. So I've got all that there, and when you sit that on there, you can see I have an overlap. Okay, so that little overlap is going to be where my lifter fits in. So depending on how far you want that out depends on how much material you have left over. So think about that when you're making the lid, or when you're thinking about doing a lifter. So when we're using this one, it's not going to fit where I want it to fit. Okay, so I have to put in a couple of stops. So all I've done here, screwdriver, couple of stops like so. Are you keeping up? Hope so. Okay, so now what will happen is I'm going to rebate that. I'm going to flip it over and do that side too there. But I've got two other tasks to do before I even get to this. But I've made my stop. Okay, so there's my thing. It's nice and solid, stable. So let's do some routing. Shift all these tools and the little box. This either. So what I want to do, the first task is to round over the top edge. So rounding over the top edge, all I'm using is my rounding over bit that comes in our kit. Just put some of this stuff away so that I'm not tripping over it.
Col David Rowland reckons that jig is great, that little system.
I'm glad. Yeah, I like this. I like to see people using the techniques that I'm sort of showing. So now I want to round over the top edge. Of course, that's the inside. Okay, so I'm going to round over this edge here. Come on, E.T., let's get over there and get busy. So ears on, everybody. If you wish to have a little step on there, so that it comes off the box, steps down, then rolls over. What we need to do is lift the route a little bit. You'll notice I rounded it off first. Here's on again. You can see now I have a little step on the top edge. My next task is to undercut the bottom. So to do that, we change to the box core bit. Now this is the small one that we have in our kit. Stand up. Yep. The problem with this one is though, we're going to need to have a fence. Okay, so bring out a fence that has some sort of cutout in it. Set our height before you set the fence. How much do we want to take out? That's up to you. There's not going to be a lot. And what I've done is I've just gone to the bottom edge of the curve. Okay, so our curve so far, if I do this on the top here, if you have a look at this, so far what I have is this. I have my piece of timber, like so. I have a rebate, this is the top edge of course, and then I have that round over. Okay. So that's what I have at this stage. What I want to do is I want to cut out that bit. Okay, so that's what it will look like, of course. So that's our little keeper. So where the curve comes to a straight section, okay, that's where the height for my rebate cutter, my box core bit. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to do. Okay, let's get rid of that. So I've got that set. Now I can bring my fence over. Get that parallel. And I want the edge of the route a bit. Come around ET.
So just put him onto ET.
Put him on ET. Okay, so what I want to do there is just cut through, and I've lined that up with the front edge of my groove, so.
That's it.
How are we doing, folks? Are you all good with this so far?
Yeah, everybody says that going back to the replays is going to help enormously to get the detail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, ears on. Need to take a tiny bit more off. So if you can see the shape of that now, there's the shape. So how good does that look? Now all I want to do is take off this side and that side and shape this. So let's get rid of all of this stuff.
Ah, yes. Yeah, you can see it now. I'm just getting the vision where you've got that, the coving.
Yep.
It's good.
Okay, now the router bit that I use to take that edge off, a front edge off, if you have an A10 jig, just use the straight bit out of the A10. That's what it looks like. I probably need to give that a bit of a scrub. It's always important when you're working with these. It only takes a couple of seconds. Scrub the material off that and drop a little bit of oil on.
Col, can I just ask a quick question from Michael Lear? Michael's asking, how can I achieve this if I haven't got the tools? It's a bit of a tough one, that one.
It is a bit.
Yeah, he says if he hasn't got the tools, exact tools that you've got, he has to, suppose, get a little bit creative with what he's got, doesn't he?
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
So Michael, you can always purchase some of these little tools. The box core bit is a standard router bit you'll find at any hardware store. These ones here, of course, you get them off us.
I'm not
but
sure.
I make a lot of the stuff.
Yeah, you make it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if Michael's from the US, but they would have so much stuff available.
Ask him. Michael, are you in the US?
Matthew. Yeah, Matthew, sorry.
Matthew, sorry. Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to our little jig here. So we had that. What we're going to do is rebait out there. If I sit that up like so, lock it in, set my height. I want the bearing running on the jig. Ears on, folks. A little bit of a time. How cool does that look? Nice and smooth. If I flip it over, how does that look? Nice little keeper, nice little lifter. It's just a very cute little lifter that adds to the thing, and it sort of hides away with the box. It makes it look a little bit like it's just a quiet little part of the box. And you can do those quite simply just with some of the things that I've done there. So I haven't worked really hard to do it. I've just been a little bit patient with it. And then just going to fit this lid onto here. Gosh, I've only got 10 minutes left. See what I mean about taking time, a bit of patience? Just time flies. Now the hinges I've got in this box are, as we talked about last week, the different types of hinges. These are Brusso hinges. The screws in them are a little bit bigger. They're also a much nicer hinge to use. You'll have to excuse my pudgy fingers in the way, folks. It's the only way I can do these hinges. And then when you close the box, you've got this cute little lifter on the front. So it didn't take much to do that. Got a little bit of overlap there. We could always take that off and make it a little bit more flush if you like. And that's just by adjusting your jig. But basically that's the hinges on the lid, or the lifter on the lid. So the other lifter, I want to show you how to do that very quickly. I generally have a box full of lifters. So if you look at this, you can see I've got them made out of all sorts of stuff. Little piece of wang, and you can see the shape of those. If you look at the shape, it's quite a nice shape. This is a smaller one out of a little piece of purple heart. So a different type of lifter. Here's another one out of silky oak. You can see it's got a little step on the bottom. It's also rounded on the back edge. This one here, piece of jacaranda. You can see it's got a step at the top and rolled over. And I just make these out of all sorts of bits of timber in big pieces like that, and then I just cut them off as I need them. So I'm going to go over today because I want to show you how to make these. They're very simple, very easy to make, don't take a whole lot of effort and a lot of time. But as you can see, I save up lots of them in different shapes and colours and so forth. So what you need is a piece of timber about 10mm thick. Just take this router bit off. Find yourself a 19mm router bit. I have got one here somewhere. Just a straight bit. This one's, it's nothing fancy. You can use a spiral bit if you like, but that's just a standard 19mm straight cut router bit.
And that's actually the one that you used to cut the rebate on the box last week.
No.
No, different one.
No, different
Wider
one.
one.
Different one. This
Same
one's
shape.
a bigger one. Same type of router.
Yep.
And it's a smaller one.
Right.
So, again, trusty fence. Whoops, I've gone the wrong way around this, folks. I want my rounding over bit first. Not that one. That's the wrong one. There's so many router bits, so many router bits. Okay, want to round over one edge. So my first task is set that to the right height. Gears on. And so I've rounded over one edge. Now I need to round over the other edge. The problem here is though, because you've rounded over that top edge, it's going to sit in under the bearing. So you need to have a fence that's designed to actually fit over the top of that bearing, which is this one here. And when we do this, just put it like so, up to the fence. And what I want to do is I also want to make a little step on it. Get my fence in. Okay, so I'm going to lift the route a little bit, give me a little step. That's a little step. Ears on. And you can see I have quite a nice little shape there. Just a bit of sandpaper just to sand over that front edge. Just tidy it up a little bit. Okay, now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cut a trench down through here. I have to work out how far I want that little step to be. The step's on the bottom of the route of the lifter, because it'll roll straight off the top, underneath, tuck in, and it'll come underneath like so. So I'm going to cut a rebate down through here. Shift my fence. Take off my rounding over bit. And this is where you need the ½ inch. And again, set your height before you set your fence. I'm going to do this in 2 passes. So about halfway. And then we're going to set the fence. And you've got to work out, pencil, how far you want this to stick out. How far do you want that to stick out away from your box? So I generally have it about there. So if I set that like so, and in this case what we need to do is make sure we have a push block. Bit of safety, so push blocks like so.
Actually there's 3, never mind.
Ears on. Now the next step is to work out how much of this we want sitting above the box. Okay, so I'm only taking a little bit at a time. Now let's go up a little bit more. There should do it. As you can see, measurements are not something I fiddle around with a lot. A lot of it's by eye because everything you do is bespoke. So now we have the front of the keeper, and this is the bit that sits on top of the box. All I need to do now is cut it down there. So I'll take it over to the saw. Come on, ET. Can you see that, Pam? Pam, can you see that? Can you see that?
Not yet.
Yep, it's good. Come back, ET.
So could you just tell us again the size of that cutter? It's a 19mm, isn't it?
It's 19mm
Yep.
straight cutter.
Yep.
See what I have now? There's my pieces. And I've got a long piece, and all I need to do now is knock bits off it. So if I want to make a keeper for something, I get my trusty board. Measure up my distance, and generally on those sorts of boxes that I've shown you there, it's about 30mm. 30mm. Get my nice little saw. A little bit of sanding. I had a piece there somewhere. And then that will get glued on there. There's my little keeper. Okay, and quite a nice little shape. You can make it smaller so it sticks in, it sits in closer. You can make it bigger if you like. You can have different shapes to it. You can make it come out here further. There's lots of different things that you can do for those little keepers. Okay, so all we'll do is keep that aside now, and I'll put that on a box in a later edition. Okay.
Very sweet.
So I hope you got something out of that today. I know it's all close-up work, and there was a lot of little fiddly bits and pieces, but generally you'll find that as you go through your box making, you're going to start developing different things that you actually like to do. Some of these will actually give you a really good start to it. So keep working on it, and hopefully you will get better at it, and you'll find that people will start going, oh wow, I like your boxes. So it's always a good idea. You know, keep an open mind, and you'll come up with some really, really nice stuff. So thanks for watching, folks, and hope you got something out of it today. Next week, I'm going to finish off the box, the little one, put a coat of finish on it, and we'll start thinking about setting up for a new box. Okay, so another one to work with, and some of the techniques that you've seen in the past will pop up as well. So if you've liked what you've seen today, don't forget, subscribe to our channel, press the bell, and that'll give you a reminder, and hopefully we'll catch up to you down the track. Okay, so thanks for watching, folks. Have a nice day, stay nice, be nice, and I'll catch you all next week.